I am Trish Murray, and today I am joined by Tovey Blake, who is the CEO and founder of Above All Admin. Tovey and I met, probably 3, maybe 4 years ago now. She is an online business manager for one of my past clients, and we just got kind of talking at certain events and functions that we were going to and started to really hit it off. And so we
Yes,
keep
that's
doing
true.
these conversations every once in a while. Now, if you've been with me for a little while, you might remember Tovey. She joined me for a podcast back in October, around when we were talking about Soul Care Month, one of 3 points in the year that I talk about this idea of really thinking about how our vital energy is being managed. And so that was a great conversation. I got a lot of great feedback on that podcast. And so I'm kind of moving in this direction of going back into expanding the conversation with people where and kind of letting you guys get to know them the way that I've gotten to know them, right? One conversation at a time. Um, and so Tovey's going to join me. We're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk a little bit about what vital energy actually is. What does that mean? How do I think about that? But for right now, if she's up to it, if she's ready to accept her mission, I'm going to hand the mic over to Tovey, so to speak, and she can share a few things about herself and maybe a little bit about the work that she's doing in the world, in her own words.
Hi, guys. I'm so happy to be back with Trish. As she said, we connected through obviously a previous client, but we stayed connected, and I've really appreciated that. I really enjoyed our episode that we did last year, as well as someone that I constantly reshare, and it's one that I still get a lot of feedback from a lot of people, even through my own channels. So, as Trish said, I am the owner of Above All Admin Support Services. Actually, it's crazy to believe, but in 2025 will be my 10-year anniversary of since I opened my business, which seems
No kidding.
absolutely, yeah, which absolutely seems surreal to me. Right. That's exactly what I said. When I thought about it, I was just like, oh my gosh, like how have I ran this business for almost 10 years? Two of that now have been actually all fully full time. So there you go. Right now, I'm kind of like in this transition kind of phase of a rebrand again. I feel like I finally have found where I belong. I kind of launched a service to fail. I'm going to be honest, last year that I know it had good intention and I still feel like it has viability, but I felt like something was missing and I couldn't figure it out what it was. And so last October, actually, Trish, I don't even know if I shared this with you yet. After our actual podcast, I kind of went on this mini sabbatical, I'm calling it. And I just stopped taking clients and I kind of just waved the white flag and just basically said, I've hit this wall and I can't go no further. And this is where I'm at, and this is kind of where I'm stopping. So I really haven't picked up honestly since then. I've kind of just been handling the clients that I have right now. But in the midst of that, I kind of realized what that missing piece was for what I think for the rebrand. And that's really kind of focusing on client stewardship. And the reason being for that is I'm very much a person that since I started my business, I've always told people my business has kind of been my ministry. So it's never just about the business for me. It's about business, but it's more or less about the personal's well being. Because I feel to myself, the reason why usually somebody hires me is because something is going wrong in their life, not just in their business. It's either that they're not being able to spend enough time with their family, or quality time with people they love in general. Their health's declining, whether it be physical, mental, emotional, whatever the case may be. So for me, as long as I feel like I am taking care of that first over the business, I feel like it all flows down. You know what I mean? So that's what I'm really working on and focusing on right now, is just kind of like this rebrand, relaunch of focusing on, you know, helping people to fine tune their workflows. I'm really focusing on customer value, retention, referral, all those things that I feel like I always see a lot of things about client attraction, but I don't see a lot of things that people talking about the stewardship. And I feel
Mm.
like that's more important for me, because I feel like the stewardship needs to start right at the beginning. Whether somebody's going to be your client or not, you don't know if that person might end up being a big part of your referral network or whatever the case may be. But I always want to be front of mind of somebody. If they don't need me now, I want them to say, you know what, I might not need you, but I know somebody that does.
Yeah.
And so that's why stewardship has become really important for me. And I'm in the middle of finally building up my Women Building Legacy nonprofit. I think I had mentioned that previously in the last podcast. So I'm finally going to start doing some stuff on that, still in the infancy stages, but yeah, that's it. That's a little
That's
bit of me.
With that, let's unpack some of this. I started to see your stuff on Instagram, Tovey, where you were talking about client stewardship, and I can't tell you how, like, I had an emotional response to that, because this has been such a big thing for me over the last, I'm going to say 12 years. When I was working on my psychology degree, I went and spent a year studying this idea of consumer brand relationships.
Yeah.
And it's not just an idea, it's a whole thing. And it is the one part of business that I think you either come by it naturally and really intuitively. It just is a part of how you operate, and it can make you feel like you're like the odd goose in the
Yeah.
crowd, because I don't believe right now where we are that the business culture, that the marketing culture is really even focused on that a little
I,
bit. Like, there's a
I,
lot of chitter chatter about it. There's a lot of like talking heads about it, but it's not being integrated. It's not being embodied. So what are you saying about that?
I think for me, and you know what this really started with was last year, I've been trying for at least a couple years, being in the space of being an online business manager to be a part of an actual summit that takes place every year she's very much like a trailblazer in the VA space. Her name's Tanya Sutherland. She owns a company called VA Networking. And I finally was selected to be a speaker last year. And that's where I kind of really, it took me a while to build out that presentation, but it was something honestly that just came natural to me, because I feel like almost everything, I feel like we all have these subscriptions that we sign up to because we want to learn more about this, we want to learn more about that. And I was just getting to the point that it's just like everything that I'm seeing is on client attraction. And I get it, but it's like, what about the fact that, you know, keeping the people after, in a place where they're going to advocate for you, where you're not always having to feel like you're always having to find business.
Yeah.
And that was my struggle. It's just like, and I think that really hit me, as I said, when I went on that, my mini sabbatical. That's where kind of what the point was, is just like, I felt like I was in this rat race, and I'm like, this is not why I started to work for myself.
Yeah.
And it feels like I have to be like running down people or feeling like it was a horrible feeling. And so when I did that presentation, because that presentation actually happened after I went on my mini sabbatical and I did it, and just the response that I got from the people when I actually did it live, but even the feedback after was just so amazing, because people they even said they never thought about it. They really haven't thought about it to that degree, because everything has been about how to get your clients, how to get your clients.
Yeah. More.
Keep them,
Yeah. Yeah. I get
right?
exactly what you're saying. We have been so trained to be thinking about acquisition that we are not that we don't actually recognize that, yes, there I'm not going to say that we don't ever go into those awareness or visibility building activities, but we've kind of lost sight of this idea that, once somebody's with you, they could potentially stay for a long time, or they could potentially become your greatest ambassadors, right?
Absolutely.
Or
And
both.
absolutely. And that's the thing about it, is that I don't think people realize is that, as I was saying, somebody might never need your services, but if you can create that type of, it's really what stewardship about for me is, Trish, is the relationship.
Yeah.
It's about the relationship. And I don't think people get it. Like, this is not a number. This is a human being that is coming to you. And I feel like I can never do proper work for somebody. I'm not saying we're going to be besties or anything, but I do have to have some type of connection. And
Yeah.
especially from my own values perspective, our
Yeah.
values have to align. And I can't find that out unless we have a deeper conversation besides a list of onboarding questions.
Right. Or a list of, well, how do you do it differently than other people? Or, and we have lost the art of conversation, I think.
Yes. Yes,
And
absolutely.
I don't mean to say that like you guys out there have lost the art of conversation. I'm saying I have lost the art of conversation. We collectively as a group on the
Yeah.
planet have lost the art of conversation, and just the joy of being in a simple conversation with someone, whether it's for 5 minutes or 50 minutes, being present and just listening to what's going on for one
Absolutely.
another. And maybe that ends in a conversation about, well, how can we work together, but maybe it doesn't at that moment in time. And it's just, it's so funny, Toby, because I was just reflecting on some of my soul style pieces that I work
Yeah.
with inside my work in my business with people. And service and nurturing service and nurturing are directly tied to my internal client experience,
Mhm.
as well as sort of what I'm here to unleash for other people. Service and nurturing. And one of the aspects of service is moving towards this idea of nurturing the relationship as opposed to allowing it to consistently or to just evolve into transactions. Like there's a difference between it being a
Yeah.
very transactional conversation and it being a real human relationship conversation.
No, absolutely. And you're absolutely right in the aspect of the human connection part. Like, you know what I mean? And I feel like that's totally lost. And I feel like, and I don't know if you're planning on touching on this, but as you were talking about that, you know what, the thing that came to my head is AI,
Yeah.
because I feel like that even more now involved in being injected into this
Yeah.
is creating even more of a breakdown, Trish,
Yeah.
of that sincerity, the genuity of just connecting on one. It's just like, even as you said, right? Like, you're doing the videos at the beginning now, but there's something different about just listening,
There is.
not being distracted by what somebody's doing with, as you said, with your hands, or, certain things just going on around in their environment.
Yeah.
There's something different. And it's just like, yeah, AI is a blessing and a curse as far as I'm concerned. I think it's very good for some things. Like, I love it for brainstorming personally, but
Hmm.
that's the extent personally for myself, and not to knock anybody else that's using it for more. But I need somewhere, because of the fact that I'm a person that likes to think, jot things down. It
Yeah.
allows me to flush out my thoughts a lot quicker to
Yeah.
get to a goal.
Yeah. And it's fun. I got to tell you the story. This was, and because it goes back to one of the one of the sort of, if you will, series of conversations that I bring forward is loosely kind of tethered to this idea of relationships for the win.
Yeah,
Relationships for the win. And when I sat down and I was writing out, what were my going to be my sort of my cornerstone themes that I was going to continually kind of come back to in my conversations with people and in my podcast and in my social media and whatever. Relationships for the win was one of them, because it was like, I'm going to say maybe 7 years ago that I presented this conversation for the very first time, to a group of entrepreneurs in Calgary. And they were at all stages. Like, some of them were startups, some of them had been in the game for a while.
yeah,
But it was a beautiful community of people. And there were three things actually, and it ties back to this AI conversation. Um, three things that told me that this I had to keep bringing this conversation back into the marketplace. Number one, the guy who was coordinating this particular the entrepreneur group,
Mm-hmm.
he called me and he was like, I'm like super stoked about what you're bringing because I've never had this many people sign up for a session for a presentation that we've offered. And I was like,
Wow.
never. He's like, never. And I'm like, okay, no pressure. No pressure. I'm not feeling any
Whatsoever.
pressure at all. And then I get there and he's like, yeah, so we kept getting phone calls asking whether or not we could bring more people in. And so you're gonna like it's standing room only. And like it was so beautiful, a little overwhelming because it was one of my first presentations that I'd ever given anywhere in a solopreneur world, right? Like I'd
Yes.
given presentations in the corporate world all the time, but this was like my voice kind of going out in the world. It was kind of weird. Anyways, the third thing that really brought this back to me was at the end of this presentation where I was sharing my sort of some of the stuff that I had learned as I was studying through psychology and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And got to the end, and this fellow, such a brave soul was he, because and you'll understand why I say that I think he was a brave soul when I share this with you. He stands up and he says, so Trish, love everything that you've shared, thank you so much for your time, but I have a question. And I said, okay, I'll see where we go with this. He says, what does this mean in the context of like what technology is doing right now? And I
Mm-hmm.
said to him, I said, you know what? I'm going to be completely honest with you. I wasn't really prepared for that question, and I should have been because, I mean, all we ever want to talk about is technology these days. But
Yep.
I wasn't prepared for this conversation. So I just paused for a moment, and I think it was like divine download, like
Mm-hmm.
just me creating some space for that. And I said, but like if you go back to the basic premise, and one of the basic points that I was sharing with people was that humans are hardwired for
Yes.
relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely hardwired. We see absolutely everything
Mm-hmm.
through this relational lens. I said, it's my opinion right now, and that's all it is. It's my
Yeah.
opinion that technology is actually failing on multiple levels because it's not bringing people together. I mean, it's done that. Like you think about FaceTime and Zoom, certainly
Mm-hmm.
happening like that. But then there's other aspects of technology that's separating, that's putting more barriers between humans connecting with humans,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And so I think there's a really fine line for like if you're in the tech space and you're listening to this, my conversation to you is, I think there's a lot of like me, myself, and I conversations that maybe need to go on in that
Mm-hmm.
boardroom in those ideation sessions about, is this truly going to bring humans closer together,
Mm-hmm.
or is what we're creating going to put more barriers in place for that human to human contact, right? That connection, that conversation, that relationship.
Yeah.
And are we facilitating the stewardship of those relationships? So there's a whole story, and I'll let
No,
you.
I love that though. But like I can understand why you're saying he was a brave soul to ask that question. But and I love your honesty and transparency and the fact that you're just like, you know what, I wasn't even prepared for that. But that's that's the whole point though. Like just even him, I think asking that question and you guys having that conversation just reinforced the whole point of why you were there, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so come back to, that's one of the reasons why, like, I've reworked my conversation, or my messaging, my topics so many times.
Mm-hmm.
And this one just kept coming back to me over and over again. And here's the really super fun thing, like super fun thing, is that when I found human design and I started working with my human design, there's something called your incarnation cross in human design.
Ooh.
And my incarnation cross, there's two main themes. Number one, about bringing people back to what is truly valuable, like truly of value, and really owning our value, that unique space that we hold on the planet.
Yeah.
And the other side
Mm.
of it is rewriting relationships, rewriting relationship agreements for true togetherness, for
Oh, I
true
love that.
togetherness. Yeah. And so
Relationship agreements.
I ju-
What?
I just I just had this whole moment when it's one of the reasons why I love human design as much as I do, because it just had that kind of like knock 1-2 punch for me. It was like, okay,
Yeah.
this
I,
is what's my work is all about.
I love that on so many levels, like you don't even understand. Like, yeah, I really understand that. I think I've been going through this thing, especially the last little while, like specifically this month. I guess I will share the news now. And I know that by the time people hear this, I'll probably be further along with this. But on July 3rd, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I know it's your first time hearing this too, because I haven't shared it with you. And I thought I really prayed on this if I was going to do it here and if I was going to make it public. But I felt I needed to because it would be disingenuous if I didn't.
Mm.
And I know I'm going to beat it and I know I'm going to be fine, but it's scary nonetheless.
Yeah.
But if there's anything that makes you evaluate anything in your life and in relationships, is when you're at a place like this.
Yeah.
And especially when you're never been a person that ever felt that you can depend on people.
Right.
You've always kind of been the Lone Ranger. You've always been the parent, even to your parents. And that's real. So I'm in a place now where everything is kind of hitting me at once. And the relationship part is a big aspect of it. You know, and my therapist, I went to go see her last week and she's like, can you just promise me that you're at least going to try to say yes more to people helping you and
Mm.
just let your family love on you for once? And I'm working on it. It's a work in progress, but more than anything is like I crave the closeness and the value of friendships more than I ever did.
I bet. Tovey, I'm first of all, I'm like deeply, deeply sorry that this is, turning out to be part of your journey.
Yes.
And of course, me and whoever is listening to this right now, I'm going to encourage you to, in whatever way this looks like for you, send just prayers towards Tovey that this journey is a short one and that
Yes.
it's resolved um, very quickly for her. And I've got now probably 5 people in my circle who are navigating this particular journey in one stage or another, and it's I, I just don't even have words for it anymore, because here's my thing is that I don't know that there are words. I don't know that there can be words, um, especially if you haven't been down this particular
Mm-hmm.
path, right? Like, I think that
Yeah.
I typically don't get into the conversation a whole lot other than to listen when people
Yeah.
need to listen, when people need that, because I don't have that shared experience. Knock on wood. I don't have that shared
Mhm.
experience, but for those who have been down that path, yeah, I mean, where Toby's at, and so yeah, I just ask you to send out some beautiful light, love, energy, high vibe stuff, and some deep prayer. That
Absolutely. And that's all I've been on. And I think that's one of the things that I like, as I've been deciding to share with who I need to share with, it's just like, for me, it's business as usual. You know what I mean? Like, I know for everybody, this journey is different. And as I said, this
Yeah,
is just a season. and
Yeah.
that's exactly what it is. It's just a time and space of right now, and this is where I'm at. You know what I mean? It
Yeah.
doesn't
Hmm.
define me, doesn't make me, but as I said, for me, it really has, I've been through it for the last few years, you know what I mean? And it's just like on different things, losing my mom, her going through the breast cancer, like just so many different things. And, sometimes I feel like for me, God just does things to stop you to really causing more damage to yourself, if that makes
Mm.
sense.
I do that I know this. I know this so well from other perspectives,
Yeah.
and on the flip side, on the back side of some of those things, I can
Mhm.
look back and be like, what kind
Yep.
of a lesson was that?
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
But I mean, I'm in a place where obviously it finds a way to work itself out. So much so that I can laugh about it now. Like when I got
Yes.
diagnosed celiac and I couldn't have gluten anymore, I thought it was the end of the world. It's not the end of the world. It's
Yep.
the end of a world, right? It's the end
Hmm.
of the world where I'm eating um, things that uh, my body can't process. And I've since found out that there's all kinds of other things that are
Hmm.
woven into that particular piece around gluten, and that's made me even more aware and more mindful about
Yeah.
how I uh, how I fuel my body, which is such a fun thing when you think back to this idea of there's 3 points in the year where I start talking about my vital energy. And,
Hmm.
you know, I talk about it because that's kind of like that's what I'm looking at right now. And this is one of those points. This is one of those points in the year where my conversation starts to really think about like vital energy. If we don't have vital energy, then
Hmm.
we are going to be feeling like we're pushing a rock uphill, and fueling our
Oh,
bodies, right? Taking care of that health factor is one big piece of vital energy, right?
you're
And
so right.
so, I also know, Tovey, how hard it is because I'm extremely independent.
No, it is
I am
absolutely.
ridiculously self-sufficient, receiving
And I
help from
think
other
people
people.
sometimes, yeah, and I think sometimes, honestly, Trish, sometimes people get like, you know, this mixed up with pride. And I try to explain to people, I'm not a prideful person. It's just the fact that, like, honestly, everybody's journey is different. And I just have not been in a situation where I've been able to have people earn my trust in a way that
Mhm.
makes me trustworthy enough to be dependable on a lot of people. I literally
Yeah,
can count on one hand, how many people I rock with like that. You understand what I'm saying? And it's
I
not
do.
many.
I
And
do.
half of them are my family.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I don't
sometimes
I
they're,
don't know that it's all that different for other people, by the way.
you
Like
know,
I can count on that same one hand the number of people that I know that, what do they call it? What do they say? That they're like your ride or die,
yeah, absolutely. And
right?
then that, yeah. And I used to feel bad about that because it's just like, I am not going to be apologetic for it anymore. I feel to myself, like, in my mind, if somebody is trying to like have a closeness with me, they'll understand that and work with me where I'm at. And I
Yeah.
feel like if you really want to be a part of my life, you're going to understand that and show to me that there's something different, because I feel to myself, if you were in the same position, I would do that for you to try to give you that
Yeah.
comfort, to know
Yeah.
that, you've been through that. And, but I'm going to show you something different. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah, and think back to that old saying, right? People are with you for a reason, a season, and a lifetime, right? And I just
Absolutely.
absolutely believe that with all my heart.
Yeah.
And you're coming into a season, so who knows the people that are going to come alongside and
So,
be there to be able to kind of walk with you during that period for as long as you need them to be. And they're all going to bring this amazing kaleidoscope of
mhm.
goodness, like uniqueness, that
Mhm.
I don't think one person can bring in these situations. Like there
Yeah.
there needs to be a variety of people, but Absolutely. Yeah. Just going to pause there for a second and kind of come back to client stewardship. So you're kind of moving in that direction, which is really interesting because the client that you and I were working on, um,
Hmm.
that was something that I felt really strongly for them as well, because they were already, again, that they were very intuitively oriented
Yeah.
towards that. So there wasn't a lot of like recalibration that
Mm.
was needed in that
Hmm.
instances, where there's other clients that I'm working with that are that they are, the best way I can describe it, the most kind way I can describe it is they've gotten addicted to client acquisition, and
Oh.
they're in that, they're in the treadmill, right? They're in the treadmill,
Hmm.
and it takes a while to sort of,
Mm.
um, give the hamster a rest every once in a while.
Wow.
Let the wheel stop spinning, for a little while, and just and really refocus our energy and
Mm.
our attention at different stages in the relationship. um, which, my clients hear about all the time, that everything in business is just a reflection of what we see in human interactions, right? So
Well, I
but
think,
yeah, awareness
and I
is
totally, yeah,
part of it.
awareness is everything. Absolutely. And I think for me, what I realized, and I don't know about you, but I worked with a lot of clients last year, because I know we talked about this at the latter half of last year, but the bottom was falling out for a lot of specific industries. And I had some clients in those industries, right? And I tried to have these conversations with some of them about the fact that, you know what, like, eventually your industry is going to probably bounce back, because they're just one of those industries that it's up and down anyways, depending on what's going on, right? If
Hmm.
people have money, don't have money. And I was really trying to help them move away from this whole obsession with client attraction and kind of refocus it on the client stewardship. But for some people, it just doesn't, as you said, they're
It
just
is so
not ready. It
it
is.
is so hard, and the bigger the business, I think the harder it is.
Mhm,
Right. So
absolutely.
when I was working with the big guys like Harley Davidson is actually one of my favorite brands, because they were uh, they were an anomaly
Mhm,
in the context of big business marketing. But like, you look at businesses like Home Depot, and at the time
mhm,
Merck's Work Warehouse, sorry, Mark's, and a NHL team who shall remain nameless because of their dismal playoff performances. But like, the bigger an organization gets, the harder
mhm.
it is for them to maintain that relationship with their
Yes,
customers, because the relationship gets further and further away. They then have account people, or
yes,
salespeople, or they have people holding the relationship for them. And when that person leaves, the relationship is in a very precarious place, right?
mhm,
And I know that was a lot of the conversations that we were having, in terms of making sure that, no matter what else was going on in the business, that the business still held the relationship with the client or with the customer, right? That the relationship with the client
mhm.
was with the business, with the product, with the service,
Yeah,
as opposed to with the provider, is all in the context of bigger, larger organizations, which I said is tough. It is a cultural decision, and
mm,
from a leadership perspective, like, see, like, it's an all play. Everybody's got to buy into that, because it can't just be the CEO that comes in and has this idea. Can't just be
mhm,
human resources that's driving that. It has to be everybody, and everybody who gets hired understands that this is an this is a very organic thing, and you are a steward of the brand. You're not you're not there to
mhm,
invest it sort of, well, back to this idea of relationships for the win. You're
mhm.
not there to be a barrier, to become
Yes,
a barrier between the customer and the organization. You're there to be a conduit, right? So
absolutely.
yeah. Yeah.
And if you're not, then I don't even know. But I think that's where it comes back down to, like, we were talking about the previous client that both me and you share that relationship with. And I think it's important because I think what I've learned specifically is that's where the importance of core values come in. Because I feel like if you work with people that do not have align with the same core values of you're starting with your own,
Yeah.
that working relationship, as much as you want it to work,
Yeah.
it will eventually hit a dead end.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's an interesting thing too, because obviously, you get into business, and depending on where you are, if you're
Mhm,
solopreneur or micro business owner, but if you've kind of grown beyond that, and you've not done regular enough check-ins with your values,
mhm,
because they're shifting right now. Our values are shifting right
mhm,
now, and I'm this is another conversation that I'm going to bring forward in the new year about the values shift.
mhm.
They are shifting so fast, and in some ways in such big ways,
Yes.
that if you did a values exercise, like 3 years ago, and you haven't done one recently, it's time to do one, because I think
Yeah.
you're going to find that your values, what you value, what you truly believe to be valuable, is going to have shifted, and
Yeah.
so will your customers.
Yeah. And that was one of the things that I did recently too, as I was working towards this rebound. I went through my mission again. I went through my vision and, all of those things, my values, because I really wanted to see. And it was interesting, right? Because I think as we grow our businesses and do different things, you want to almost always feel like you haven't gotten so far away from why the reason you started your business,
Yeah.
right? And I feel like at some point, maybe sometimes we all do for different reasons, but for the most part, I was pleasantly surprised that I really only have to make small tweaks, but I always go back to my values because I realized that after a while, especially in the beginning, when you're in that part of your business or even trying to even rebrand yourself where people are questioning your, I hate this word, like your authority or your expertise,
Yeah.
and you feel like you have to be in this state of mind where you're always having to prove yourself,
Hmm.
and then you just end up accepting work that in your right mind that you probably never would. But at times I feel like we all have been at that point, but I
Yep.
use that as my core foundation of any reason if I'm going to choose to work with somebody now or not, because as I said, I know to myself, if there's even one thing off that list, and I've tried to be flexible in the
Yep.
fact of trying to give people the benefit of the doubt,
Yep.
and it's never failed, Trish. It never fails.
So you're saying, like, Toby, when you're in like a new client
Mm,
experience, you're just, they're
mm,
kicking the wheels, they're like, you guys are just sort of feeling each other out, if it's a good fit. You're going back and you're looking at your values and
absolutely.
saying, how do I feel this person is going to align with my values? That's awesome. That's awesome.
And then another
And
thing, even for me, another thing I always like, one of the things that I always do when I even hire for myself, even if it's on a project basis, one of the questions that I always ask is, how are you giving back to the community?
mm, yeah,
If you can't answer that question in any type of form of way,
yeah,
even whether I'm hiring you or whether you want me to work for you,
yeah.
that's a deal. Those are deal breakers for me.
Yeah, because it's something that you value. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and when you think about it, I mean, yes, it's for you. It's for you,
Hmm.
so that you feel like, yeah, I like working with these guys. Like these guys are really, they're an enjoyable experience for me.
Yes,
But it's also for them,
absolutely.
because when things start to break down, if things start to break down in that relationship, it's generally because they're bumping up against something that you value that they don't,
Yes,
and they're
exactly.
going to get frustrated just like you're going to get frustrated, right?
Mhm.
Um it's not about, I don't think, and this is another thing that, I could go on and on and on about stuff like this. Clearly it's been a while since I've done podcasts. But it's not about like approved. You know
Yes.
that radio commercial, right? Like you're looking at someone, you're thinking they look good on paper, you need the money, approved. And then all of a sudden 6 months later you're like, what the hell is
Oh,
this? Right?
yeah. It makes me think of that big, you remember the Staples used to have that commercial with that big red button?
Yeah.
And it
The
totally
easy
just made,
button.
you know what I mean? And it was just like, yes, like it's a
Yeah.
stamp of approval, like almost like
Yeah.
the Family Feud button.
Yeah.
But it's like, damn it to hell, you're right. It's just like,
Yeah.
it isn't like that, right? And it's just like, and sometimes it just becomes so bad that, and it, you know, there was a time where I didn't even fire clients, even though I should have probably not have hit that red button. And I knew that I shouldn't have went further. But as I said, like, and I think that's why it's so important for people to, as we're talking about client stewardship, relationship management, that's why all those things are important, right? Like for me,
Yeah.
that's why the personal well-being of a person is more important than the actual business itself, because regardless if business is just an avenue, and for us to be able to, in this day and time, to, you know, accrue what is considered to be the currency to live, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like, we can't take any of that stuff with us when we die, eh, Trish?
Yeah. Well, and it's funny that you say it that way because and again, clearly I've been living in this paradigm for long time now that it's like it's a matter of fact for me
Yep.
now that I don't see our business as solely something that is meant to provide us with the currency to live on the planet.
Yep.
I see our business as one of, probably a handful of things that are present in our life, our health being one of them.
Mhm.
Yeah, our relationship with money, our relationship with other people, that sense of meaning and purpose, our work, our
Mhm.
business, our careers. It's all, in my view now, Tovey, it is all about how is this bringing me into soul growth, right? So, there's different levels of thinking about, life on planet Earth, but the
Mhm.
last 10 years for me just got so crystal clear that, man, if I really think that being an entrepreneur, being in my own business is so that I have, freedom in my schedule, which is great and
Mhm.
I love it, which maintaining the lifestyle that I want to have, which is great, I love it.
Mhm.
Being able to buy all these new cars or new houses, which would be fun, love all that. But if that's all that it is, it's like, wow, I think we're missing the whole big picture here,
Amen to
right?
that.
Like,
Amen to that.
and I would say on the flip side of that, like if you are not called to be an entrepreneur, if you feel like you want to stay working and helping somebody else build their vision for
Yeah.
them in their business, that's a part of your soul growth. That's all it is.
And,
That's all it is. I
and I
think I'm
think
gonna have to
that's
do a podcast about this, Tovey. I'm gonna do a podcast and it's gonna be called All of Life is a PSYOP, because it's all about soul growth. And we get
absolutely.
psyoped into thinking that it's about something else. It's not. So
Mm, that's so
there.
true. And the thing about it is like, as you're saying, entrepreneurship is not for everybody. It's not something that I ever thought or planned that I would ever do, because trust me, I didn't think I was cut from that cloth at all, even though my dad, at the time I didn't understand it, him being a welder. Cause I think when people think about somebody being in a trade, they don't think about self-employment. So, well, I knew my
Oh
dad,
my gosh, yes.
right? But then because he worked for the union, and then he went and started to be a rig welder, and I didn't really understand the difference obviously until I was older, right?
Mhm.
But now I look at it and like basically all three, me and my two siblings, we all work for ourselves.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how that happened, but I feel like, as you're saying, it's like it's the growth for me. It's like, it's like when you go back home or you see like friends that maybe you haven't, or somebody that I wouldn't say necessarily friends, but somebody that you've known in your past, for example, and you haven't seen them in a while.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how it just irks me when every time I see that person, Trish, their life has not progressed in any way.
Oh,
I have gray hair now, okay? And I knew you when my body was snatched, it was tight. These girls were up and perking and working. You know what I mean?
I do.
And you are still talking about the same shit. You're doing the same shit.
Yeah,
Like, oh my God, no.
I know. It's I totally feel this, and I feel this for one reason. So in the summertime for the last 3 years, I've been going back to stay at a place like probably about 25 kilometers from where I grew up.
Okay.
And when I first moved away from that area to Calgary, and I stayed in Calgary for quite a few years, quite a number of
Mhm.
years, I would go back home, right to my hometown. And for the first like 3 years, I drove in there and I saw the same guy walking down the same road every time I drove into town. And I was like, there's a message here for me. There's like a divine message here for me. Maybe reinforcing that, girl, you did the exact right thing. You needed to move. You needed to
Yeah.
move yourself out and move forward, because this is otherwise you'd be walking in the exact same place as you were
Yep.
before you left, right? And like it was hard to leave. Like it's hard. I mean, I wasn't one of those people who was like, I can't wait to get out of here. I'm going and, touring the world. I was not that person. I liked my hometown. I liked hanging out with my
Mhm.
friends here. And I really didn't have that, I didn't have a clear focus of what I was going to do when I got there, which is all a whole other conversation. But it was like a divine message for me. Like, so when you say that you're now you can talk to people and you can get into conversations and you're like, oh my gosh, we're still talking about this. Oh my gosh, that is still something that's really real for you. I'm like, yeah, yeah, okay, okay. And it's an exercise in patience,
Yeah.
and it's an exercise
Understanding,
in grace that
understand,
you oh, and understanding.
compassion,
Yeah, to just
all of those
allow
things,
that.
right?
Yeah, allow that to be their experience of the world. In the meantime, I be over here. I just gonna be over here doing
You
these
know what I
things.
mean? I'll be, next time I see you around the way, hey, I wish you the best. And
Yeah,
as nothing to
absolutely.
do, like as we're talking about, like this whole conversation, if you really think about it, is the different things that we're talking about, whether it be from a business or personal aspect, it's all journey,
Yeah.
right? So if that's their journey and that's where they feel comfortable in their journey,
Yeah.
all I can say is that I just hope at some point, even if they're doing the same thing, that there's at least one point in that journey that they're adding value to somebody's
Yeah.
journey,
Yeah. Yeah, you kind of hope that for sure. But at the
right?
same time, like it's been like probably the last 3 or 4 years for me personally, and
Hmm.
for a lot of different reasons. Most of you guys know some of them. For a lot of different reasons. The last 3 or 4 years for me has been just a complete, I don't even know how to describe it. It's not a 180, it's not a change of direction. It's like a settling. It was like a
Mm,
settling for me of like, or like this grounding that happened for me of being able to look at people and be like, that's your path. In
yeah.
fact, even more so,
Mm,
you chose that path. And I bless you on the path that you have chosen for yourself. And off you
yeah.
go. Have fun with that, right? Enjoy that as much as you can. I'm going to
Yeah.
be over here enjoying my path.
And it's funny because I read a quote the other day that really like hit me in a different way. That because it was talking about something about the fact that like when you choose to do nothing, that's still a choice,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of people realize that. Like they think to themselves, maybe sometimes choosing to do nothing is like you're actually helping the situation because you're avoiding it because whatever outcome maybe you're trying to avoid, but you choosing not to do nothing
It's
is still a
choosing.
choice, right? And you have to deal with those consequences. And I know it's not easy because I'm the first person to say I hate dealing with confrontation. I hate feel like, you know, I am hurting somebody, but I've realized over a few years and just some things that I've been through, like the importance of boundaries is so important. And you choosing to say nothing, thinking to yourself that's establishing a boundary
Yeah.
is actually just it's almost like emotional suicide for yourself. It's like
Without them? Yeah,
yeah,
100%. And we're talking about this through this idea of soul care, and
yeah.
I renamed self care to soul care.
Mhm.
I think boundaries is caring for your soul. I think boundaries is
Absolutely.
like, I'm not talking about like no one's allowed near me. No one's
No.
allowed to impinge upon my whatevers, right? Like this is still, you know, back to humans are hardwired for
Mhm.
relationship. Relationships goes in two ways, but without boundaries, without understanding what's important, what's valuable, what we value, and when it's time to stand up, when
Mhm.
someone keeps treading on your values, I don't think that we're being very caring towards ourselves and towards our soul. And in the long run, I don't think we're being very caring towards them either, because they're not learning what they're supposed to be learning.
And they're gonna continue to exert the same type of toxic behavior because that's what it is, toxic
Yeah.
behavior, toxic
Hmm.
actions. You're not doing them a favor at all.
Yeah.
You might
No,
think
I
you are,
agree.
but you're absolutely not.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree. This is why we have conversations. It's because I mean, we don't agree about everything. And this was
Mhm.
actually one of the things that came through. I was just listening to our podcast from October. And one of the things that had sparked for me as we were going into that, Toby, was this idea of um, we need to learn how to come together as a
Yes.
collective, right? Like Tovey and I don't share the same opinion about a lot of things, right? We haven't had the same experiences in a
Mm,
lot of different ways,
absolutely.
but we have chosen to find the things that we do share commonality around and build from there, and then hold space for the fact that I don't really see it like that, and you don't see it the way I see it on these matters, but we choose to find common ground and build from there. And my goodness, if there is one thing, I still feel this very strongly, that if we as a collective, like humans
Mhm.
on the planet, we don't figure out how to get
Oh,
past the bullshit, the bullshit that is being that is being poured out into the world, that is designed
mhm.
to just keep us separate and
Yep.
keep us in fight mode with each other. If we can't figure out how to get beyond that, I don't know what happens. I don't know what happens.
I
I
think
know
we
there's
I
I
think,
know there's a lot of
you
people who
know,
are doing it, so that gives me a lot of encouragement.
yes. I feel like there's always that one person where I just feel to myself like exactly how you feel. Because I really think we both know we probably don't want it to happen, but if we don't get it together, we all know what's going to happen. But I always
Absolutely.
love the one person that just restores my faith in humanity. And I can't tell you how I just, for that one person, I will just grip the hell onto it. Like I can't even tell you for like
Yeah.
dear life,
Yeah.
Trish, until maybe the next person comes along because it's like it seems like such a rarity now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That I feel like I have to hold on to it. Have to
Yeah.
in order to keep going. You need that hope.
Yeah. Yeah. My friend Mandy actually just posted something to Instagram not long ago, and she
Mhm.
used it was from the 15th century, this word that was used in the 15th century, respair. Respair.
I've never
And it
heard that
means
word.
it means to find fresh hope and to recover from despair.
Mhm.
And like,
Oh,
I kind of got some shivers there as I was talking about that there's just, I do feel like, when I go out into the world, and I sort of step outside my nucleus of people who
mhm.
have a lot of shared viewpoints and that kind of thing, when I step out into the world, and encounter all kinds of other people, I really am feeling, um, a little bit of empath energy there. I'm really feeling like there's a lot of people in despair. There's a lot of
Mhm.
people who are living
Oh,
without hope. They can't see past the events
There's a lot of pain.
unfolding.
There's
There's
a
a lot
lot
of
of
pain.
pain.
There's a lot of trauma. There's a lot of um, just not knowing. And the uncertainty is one thing, but
Mm.
I don't know. So I really get that idea of, what, to your point, back to, you can go, and if nothing else changes in your life, sure, okay, that's fine. But can we find a way to be in service or of
Mm-hmm.
service and bring value to someone's world? Maybe that lifts the despair for them. Maybe that, sparks new joy
Yes.
for them, right?
Amen. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Anyways, I'm just looking at the time. Tovey and I could talk forever. And so
Yeah.
that's why I'm going to bring her back and we'll have another conversation. But in the meantime, I think you did a great job of just kind of bringing people up to speed on what's going on for you around
Yeah.
client stewardship. For sure, I'm going to give you a shout out. I want to give you a shout out. If you are in a space where you are looking for, you know, not just executive assistant or VA, virtual assistance support, but you're looking for somebody who can actually look at your business administration, the processes and the systems that you have, and bring a fresh perspective to how those can become more efficient and more effective. I really want to encourage you to reach out to Tovey. Find her on LinkedIn. You can find her through me, and same thing on Instagram. I'm not on Facebook. I'm in Facebook jail, so you won't find me on Facebook. But you can
Well, it's
find
meta jail
Tovey.
now, isn't it?
You can find Tovey through me on Instagram, and on Instagram at Soulstyle Trish, and on LinkedIn as well. And I'll put all of her contact details below as well, that you can find her directly. But I'm just going to thank you. I love you. I love you. I am so
I love you
grateful for
too.
this conversation.
Grateful for you too. I was looking forward to today, so I appreciate it. It's a great way to start off the week. So thank you for having me back. And
Well,
I
and,
appreciate
I want to thank you for opening up your heart and sharing. Uh, and so again, sending you absolute blessing and peace as you navigate this journey, my dear
yeah.
friend.
All right. We'll talk
Okay.
soon.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.